Hey guys, Justin here from Gladstone Fly and Sport Fishing again. I'm going to have another chat to you today, guys, about the Flatshad X. Had a lot of questions about rigging them, aside from weedless and how they come out of the packet. Is there different variations we like to use? Have we played around with the weights and things like that? Well, the answer is yes. I like to play around with lots of lures, as many people do. And we certainly like to play around with different weights and different jig heads, and we find that different actions that we like, we can get out of various jig heads and that. So I'm going to talk to you today about the barra sizes, so particularly the 130, the 145 and the 170, and which jig heads I think suit outside of the standard rigging and why. So straight away, like with the 130, I've grabbed a weedless one, an old one that I've used a fair bit, and we've just rigged up this fairly standard on a standard jig head. This is a nitro jig head, so that's a 1/2 ounce 5.0 for the 130, and it fits straight in there. You get a lot of movement out of these lures fit on a normal jig head with the toe point at the front like that, and all you need to do with that is just slide it on as you would with another 5 or 6 inch paddle tail plastic, and to secure it up the front, like a lot of guys do, just put a dab of super glue right up at the nose, and that holds it there perfectly. But they swim really exceptionally well with that nitro jig head. You can use a Baram bar or a TT, it doesn't really matter, but that's the 1/2 ounce, that's a 5.0. The nitros and the Baram bars are really quite strong, so I like those. But yeah, that one's the 130, so that's just for open water fishing. You're not worried about fishing tight into weed and things like that. Just a nice slow rolled sort of jig head style of plastic, so that works quite well on the 130. So that's a bit of a favourite in weight, that 1/2 ounce. I find that seems to sink at the rate I like it, and it certainly tracks at the depth that I like. But as I said, there's no right or wrong way. You play around with weights and different sizes, but that 5.0 seems to fit exactly in the pre-prepared hole that the weedless comes out of, so I think that's a good suit. For the 145, we actually like the weight it's given. It is quite heavy, but in the jig head range. But if you cast it out, if your normal long cast, and literally pretty much start to wind straight away, they track it about 8 feet down. And they hold that depth on a nice steady roll pretty well. Now, the only thing you need to do with these out of the packet, which I've found, is just add just a little dab of glue in behind the eyes on each side, and that'll just secure that jig head in there really nice and firm. I know we've had a few questions about the jig head coming loose, so that's the jig head version, not the weedless version. The weedless version holds in there really snug. Haven't had any of those come out, but just out of the packet, and this happens with a lot of lures, and a lot of guys like to add little dabs of super glue to different lures to get the plastic to hold up against the jig head, especially after a lot of repetitive casting. So yeah, that 145, that's the blackjack. Now I put super glue on the inside of each eye, just on that jig head that it comes with, and we fished this straight out of the packet the other day in the saltwater. And this one caught a couple of big goldens. One was 1.18 m and the other one was 1.12 m. Fished with the standard jig head and the standard treble on the stinger, and worked perfectly. So great lure also for the saltwater guys. So get out amongst them. We were fishing in about 17 metres of water and hopping them mid-water through the column, as well as little burns. And the big golden sucked it that far down. I'm not sure if you would have seen the photo on the Wilson page, but it was about longer than my mustard pliers to get it down. I had a lot of trouble getting it out. So yeah, that's the 145. So as I said, they work really well. Standard out of the packet. I think the weight's pretty good. You've just got to retrieve them at a nice steady rate and start your retrieve almost instantly if you're fishing over the top of weed. But very simple, just that dab of glue in behind the eyes, and that'll hold that jig head there perfectly. The 170, now this one's a little bit different. The 170, I like to come down with weight a little bit and just reduce the weight. Now, what I've found with this is the Area 51 jig heads from TT that they make for the slick rigs perfectly fit inside the nose of this 170. It also gives you a bit more hook exposure with that Gamakatsu SL12S hook, and you still got the option tucked in here with the swivel that you can fit a stinger hook treble on the bottom of. But if you'll see, that just tucks in there nicely, right? A lot like the jig head that it comes out with, but it's a little bit of reduction in weight, and I find this particular jig head, the F51, sits in the nose perfectly. It doesn't come out as easy, but again, I still like to just, this plastic's caught a ton of fish, so it's pretty beaten up. But again, I like to just add that dabbed super glue just on the inside of both eyes, just on that little bit of lead, and that'll hold there nicely. But that's the 170. It's been a pretty popular size. I know the guys caught a lot of fish in the Barra Tour on it, and previously, but as I said, that Area 51 with that gammy hook gives you so much exposure, really strong hook. You can go really hard on the fish, salt or fresh, and yeah, that weight is just a fair bit lighter than the one that comes out with. The jig head version of those are up around the 70 gram mark. For me, personally, I like it just a little bit less than that. I found this is a better sink rate for Lake Awunga. From what I do, some guys will say the opposite. That's just in my opinion, but that's yeah, three really good easy rigs and easy hook assemblies for these Flatshad X's, and I think you'll find that the variation in the way they swim with these different jig heads will change the way you think of these things. So they really do perform differently when you throw different jig heads in them. So, you know, this Area 51 jig head sort of has a really distinct role, but probably gives it a little bit more of a faster tail beat, like the traditional Flatshad. Whereas if you put a jig head at the front of them like this, they roll really wide. So have a play around with them, guys. But as I said, these are the few different ways you can rig them up with a jig head, outside of the way they come in the packet. So again, just to recap, the 130, that's got a 5.0 nitro jig head on it. As I said, you can use any brand, your preference, but that's a 1/2 ounce. The 145, as I said, out of the packet, just a little bit of super glue on the inside of the eyes, and I like that weight on that one. I think it's pretty good. It tracks really nicely. It's a great depth for where we're fishing it. And again, salty and fresh, it's a killer. That blackjack colour is a bit of a favourite too, so get that one in. And of course, yep, again, the 170 with that Area 51 SL12S, with the option of the stinger on the bottom. The toe point pokes out perfectly where the jig head toe point on the original jig head comes out. So yeah, guys, just thought I'd sort of do a little bit of a recap on the Flatshad X's. Any questions, more than happy to answer them. Shoot them through to the page. But look, these guys, these lures here are going to absolutely kill it. They've proven to be really exceptional. Salty and fresh already. And I'm sure there's going to be more ways that people like to vary the different weights and jig heads the way they use them. So can't wait to see what people come up with. Awesome. Happy fishing.